Welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast, our preview edition. A big one this weekend. Michigan heading to Wisconsin to play the Badgers in Madison, where the Wolverines have not won since 2001. They've lost 5 straight at Camp Randall. Plenty of reason for those fans to jump around over there. But Chris, I wanted to, before we get into this matchup, we'll talk a little bit about that second half and the Rutgers game in general. But you're heading out in a matter of hours here to this game, in preparation for this game here on Friday. But what's your favorite thing to do in Madison? You hear about the dairy, the cheese curds, the shakes, this, that, the beer, spotted cow, or whatever it's called. What's your favorite part about going to Madison? Because everybody I've talked to, and I haven't been there, but everybody I've talked to has said this is one of the best road venues in the Big Ten.
They've got this place called Culver's that has these cheese curds.
Yep.
That was your joke yesterday, and it was nice. And Clay, I got to give you credit for that. Culver's. There's a place we eat at every Friday night before this game called the Mariners Inn, and it's owned by a former Iowa football player, and it's right on one of the lakes there. We have a good friend of the Wolverine that we go out there with, and eat on the water. It'd be really romantic if I wasn't there with John Borton, I'll be honest, but it is unbelievable. The steaks there, again, called the Mariners Inn, and it's just fantastic. So that is the thing to do. The crazy part is these are always 11 o'clock games. So it seems like the last 2 or 3 that we've been, 2 times that we've been there, it's been like an 11 a.m. game. So you can't do a whole lot that night. You're getting ready to go out and get to the stadium early. But that Mariners Inn is fantastic. So we're looking forward to that. And great college town. It really is. The good news for Michigan fans is that in these 11 o'clock games, or for the Michigan team, the students don't really get there until the second quarter. So you're going to have an opportunity there when it's not going to be as loud to do some damage, hopefully. And we'll see what they do tomorrow, or Saturday, rather. I guess tomorrow.
Yeah, the crowd's going to be a factor. I mean, I thought it was kind of interesting, Donovan Jeter's perspective on it, talking about how it's really the defense's job to control the crowd, even though it's going to be quiet when they're on the field. But if they allow a touchdown, when the offense comes back out, it's going to be absolutely, bananas. If they get a stop, if they get a 3-and-out, if they force a field goal, then it's not going to be as loud for that Michigan offense, when they come out on the field. Michigan's got to play complementary football, and not only that regard, but, in all regards in this game. So it's kind of funny. So this week, Michigan comes out with a win against Rutgers. They're able to pull it off, a 7-point W after a horrible half. I mean, you said it, and, you've been to more games than me, but I agreed with you that it was one of the worst halves in Michigan stadium history from a Michigan team. Statistically, it's hard to argue against that, right? Rutgers is an okay team, I think. They'll probably knock off a couple guys again in the Big Ten. They had 3 Big Ten wins last season. But we're coming into this Wisconsin game with so much hesitancy about this Michigan team because of one bad half. They've looked good, even though they've struggled in different aspects here and there with maybe some consistency when you look at the past game before that last half. I guess, what's your vibe right now after that Rutgers game on this Michigan team? Because there's still so many question marks as we head in. They haven't played a really tough schedule yet, haven't been tested like Wisconsin has yet.
Yeah, and I'm not bullish about Michigan going up to Wisconsin, but it's not about the one half. Okay, it's about the matchups and how is Michigan going to move the ball against Wisconsin's defense. Jim Leonard's done a hell of a job, Wisconsin's defensive coordinator, with that defense. They've got a stout defensive line. What are they giving up? 23 yards a game on the ground, which is insane. Notre Dame, I guess the game plan was to not even try to run on them. Michigan's got to run on them a little bit. That's going to set up some play action. But what I want to know, and what I really want to see, is adjustments when they aren't able to run the ball. Are they going to come out with some play action? Are we going to see some RPOs? Matt Weiss, Michigan's quarterbacks coach, said the other day, we haven't had to run RPOs because we've been able to run the ball. Well, what's going to happen when you can't run the ball? And we saw that in the second half of the Rutgers game. Cade McNamara was missing his receivers. Guys were dropping balls. Offensive linemen were not blocking well. So that's got to be better. Is part of that these guys taking their foot off the gas and it's a little bit of human nature? I think absolutely. I think they played a lot of good football to that point. There's no question about it. But to me, too, you look at Wisconsin and everybody's kind of overlooking them because of their record. They should have beaten Penn State. Clay, you and I watched that game. That was kind of a fluke. I think they dominated big stretches of that game. Against Notre Dame, they had some really good stretches. Graham Mertz was terrible at times when Notre Dame sold out to stop the run, and that's why they really got beaten that game. That and the special teams return for touchdown. So Wisconsin's better than they appeared. I don't think there's any question about it. And how's Michigan going to hold up on the lines? That's to me the big question mark. That was going to be the case no matter what happened in that second half against Rutgers. So to me, you want to prove it that you go out and you win at Camp Randall for the first time since 2001 when you were what, 5 years old?
Yep, 5 years old.
Yeah, five years old, man. That's crazy. Do you remember it?
I do. I do not. I mean, I remember watching Michigan football at that age, but I only really remember Rose Bowls for some reason back in those early 2000s. Just kind of like the big game when you'd gather with your family and things like that.
Right.
And Ohio State.
I think they managed about 183 yards total offense that game, and they were lucky to win.
It was an ugly game. I was looking at the stats earlier. Yeah,
it was absolutely ugly. I remember it like it was yesterday. It's crazy. 20 years goes by just like that. But so it's not an easy place to win, number one. Number two, I don't like the matchups in the trenches. Here's hoping Michigan's line takes this one personally. Here's hoping the whole team takes it personally, Clay, because they've been embarrassed the last 2 times by these chumps.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, this is you've had an Ohio State problem for quite some time, but the last 2 seasons, what's happened against Wisconsin is almost arguably more embarrassing because they're a team that's a lot more comparable to you in talent. It's a team that's a lot more comparable to you in style of play over the years historically since Barry Alvarez took over Michigan for longer than that. But, physical play, and you're getting dominated at the line of scrimmage. Combined 700 rushing yards the last 2 meetings against the Badgers and getting outscored 84-25. I want to talk about quarterback play because I think it's going to come down to many things in this game, but I'm really watching Cade McNamara in this game because you mentioned the rush defense. It's just ridiculous for Wisconsin. Like you said it. I mean, Notre Dame has a couple good running backs, a pretty okay, bad. One Notre Dame fan, one of my buddies, said it's a bad offensive line. They didn't try to run the ball, as you mentioned. Michigan's going to try to run the ball, I think. But if it gets stuffed and, even if they are getting four a pop or something like that, you're still going to have to open it up if you want to sustain a couple scoring drives. It might take, 17, 20 points to win this game or whatever it is. Can Cade make some throws downfield against man coverage? And also something that people aren't talking about enough is I don't see enough separation out of these wide receivers, out of the tight ends either, to when you're manned up, when they're stacking the box and there's, only one high safety or whatever it is, who's the guy you're going to go to? Who's the guy that you trust to get open? It feels like Josh Gaddis in a way. I wish they would run some more plays for a specific guy in a specific matchup, but at the same time, without Ronnie Bell in the game, I'm not exactly sure who that is. I think it's maybe Cornelius Johnson or Eric All, and honestly, it's Blake Corum as well out of the backfield. So they've got to have a really good game plan in this game. But your thoughts on Cade McNamara heading in, and will we see J.J. McCarthy in this game if he struggles? I don't think he's on an extremely short leash, but I think that there's a shot that we see McCarthy in there if they're not getting it done through the air early on.
If they're down 14 or 17 points, I could see it. I really could. Remember a few years ago when Shea Patterson got replaced, right? And it was like, okay, are they making the move to Dylan McCaffrey now?
If he didn't get hurt, I don't know what would have happened.
Exactly. Would they have stuck with him? But regardless, to me, I think that's the question is how good is this offense and can they scheme guys open and how will they adapt? And that was one of the keys to the game that I put in there. What's your plan B if you can't run the ball against these guys? So the first half last week was outstanding. Rutgers is a solid defensive football team, and we saw receivers running open, which we haven't seen in a long time, Clay. In this offense, there were guys open over the middle, and McNamara was hitting them. He played a really good half of football, minus the obvious missed pass in the end zone, and we get it. You have to make that play, but that running game opens up so much for the pass, and if they can't run, then a lot of it's going to be on McNamara, and a lot of it on a shorter quarterback too. You need a better pocket, and this is something that pocket's got to be stout, man. You can't give 2-3 yards backwards, or you're going to get a ball knocked down at the line of scrimmage too. So that's something that you need to watch, but in my opinion, it's going to be one of those games where McNamara has to have a great game for them to win. They're going to have to throw, I think, 20 to 25 times at least. If they're throwing more than that, then they're desperate and they're probably not going to win. They're playing from behind. But and again, I want to see some schemes. Skeen and I have talked about this. Doug Skeen, our analyst, and rub routes and things like that. Where hey, let's make it a little easier for these guys to get open rather than just running a little curl or something like that they're sitting on, or a fly pattern with Roman Wilson. So really want to see more of Dalen Baldwin. For some reason, man, I keep hearing good things about him in practice. Haven't seen a ton of him in games yet, but maybe this will be his breakout game. Maybe they throw downfield and he's the big receiver that they use to get some of those big plays. But I think you got to test the edges a little bit more. Didn't see any reverses, any sweeps last week until late in the game. So to me, that's the kind of game this needs to be for the Michigan offense.
Yeah. I think when you talk about Dalen Baldwin, he got a heck of a lot of snaps last game. Roman Wilson, I think it was only 8 on offense in the games before. Obviously, Dalen Baldwin was a little banged up. It was Roman Wilson getting the bulk of those snaps, opposite of Cornelius Johnson on the outside. So I think that he's a guy to watch for sure. I was going to say, who would be your guy that if Michigan wins the game has 5-6 catches that are big, moving the chains? Is it Dalen Baldwin for you?
It is, or Cornelius Johnson.
Yeah.
Man, getting him to talk at a press conference, huh? It was pretty interesting. So, but
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about performing on the field. So let's see what you can do. And they're going to need some good downfield blocking, in my opinion, from these receivers as well in this game. This is a really good defensive football team they're playing. Again, Jim Leonard does great things. So, but that's, to me, or a tight end. We've heard about these tight ends for how long now, and Harbaugh is always singing their praises, and they can catch the ball. Let's see Schoonmaker get open. Let's see Eric All get his 5 targets and get 5 catches, something like that. Let's do something different here and make it easier on these guys to score, because in my opinion, Clay, it's going to be hard for them to score 20 points unless they come out with a game plan like we saw. I'll go back to 2017 Ohio State when they were doing things that Ohio State wasn't prepared for. You need something like that, and that's got to have Jim Harbaugh's fingerprints on it, in my opinion, and more, including maybe more RPOs, just things that they haven't shown on film yet. And you've got to take advantage of those, Clay. You've got to score and finish your drives with touchdowns, because you kick field goals in this game, you're just not going to win it.
Yeah, I agree. And that 2017 game plan against Ohio State was fantastic, and that was a Jim Harbaugh game plan. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about it. I think I like some of the stuff that they've started to do over the last couple of years. They haven't executed it quite that well, but I think it's a good blend if you mix in some of the Jim Harbaugh stuff with some of the Josh Gaddis, Matt Weiss type of things as well. Let's talk about the defense in a second. First, we want to talk about Manscaped, which is our great sponsor. It is now October, and do you know what's spookier than seeing a black cat on Halloween? I don't know if I
do
this. All right, go ahead.
I do. Probably a big bush of pubes, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's shaving your balls with anything other than Manscaped. When it comes to below-the-waist grooming, there's no need to carve your pumpkins this Halloween, because Manscaped is here to upgrade your grooming experience. Go from bite-sized candy bar to a king-sized candy bar and join the 2 million men worldwide by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code 20GOBLUE, 20GOBLUE, 20GOBLUE at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. Any thoughts on any of that?
No, I think we can just continue. I love my Manscaped gear. I'll say that. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 20GOBLUE at manscaped.com. You can get the Performance Package 4.0. You can get the Lawnmower 4.0. They've been sending us stuff left and right. Every time you check the mailbox or, open the door, there's something there. So we love our great partners at Manscaped. So go to manscaped.com. 20GOBLUE is the promo code. Flipping to, or I guess the last thing about the Michigan offense going against this Wisconsin defense, Faion Hicks, the Wisconsin corner who was banged up and missed the end of that Notre Dame game. He was questionable at the beginning of the week. It sounds like he's practiced all week and he's going to play. He struggled the first couple games, but had a good game against Notre Dame before he got hurt, and is probably their biggest or best coverage guy back there. Apparently the safeties have struggled in coverage. The corners have largely struggled in coverage, other than Faion Hicks putting together 3 good quarters against the Irish. So there's some opportunity there for Michigan to go downfield, especially if Jim Leonard, who said he's not going to sell out to stop the run because he knows Cade McNamara can pass, because they recruited him and they saw him come in at the end of last year's game and play pretty well. But at the same time, he's not tipping his hand and Jim Leonard is one of the best in the country at confusing opposing quarterbacks anyway. So he's going to make life tough on McNamara on Saturday. So flipping to the other side, we mentioned it at the top, but when you look at Wisconsin and what they've done to Michigan over the last 2 years, it's embarrassing. You said it, Michigan's got to take this one personally. It's about that as much as almost anything. But at the same time, I think Mike McDonald is better equipped to stop this Wisconsin run game with the fact that he has more fronts to put in there. He can put an extra down lineman. We've talked about how multiple this defense has been. Setting the edge is going to be huge. No more. I think they averaged 11 yards a carry on jet sweeps last year and scored 2 touchdowns on it. I mean, that's just ridiculous, especially from a team that doesn't have this total speed offense. So your thoughts on the run game and how Michigan needs to stop it?
Stop Wisconsin's run game?
Yes.
I don't think they will.
Yes.
I think that, and I think you have to cheat a little bit. Okay. First of all, Josh Ross is the most important piece of this, right? Because this is a guy that was running downhill, and some of the tackles he made in those gaps last week were unbelievable. You want to talk about contact courage from a linebacker? Put in that film of last week and watch Josh Ross putting his face mask into the chests of these ball carriers. Fantastic. I think he'll be okay to play. Will he be 100%? I don't think so, but he's going to be out there, and that's huge in terms of getting guys in the right gaps, because a couple of years ago, everybody was talking about how they got blown off the ball and everything else, and more than anything, it was gap integrity and guys missing assignments. The reason that Wisconsin was able to move the ball so well. So it's got to be better. That's where it starts. I do want to say something really quickly. The biggest concern I have on the other side of the ball is that Wisconsin doesn't have to sell out, and they still stop the run, right? Because that is a big physical defensive line, the likes of which Michigan hasn't seen all year. So if that's the case, then McNamara's going to have to be really good in going through his reads and everything else. And then those stunts and twists that they've run, Rutgers ran a couple of them last week. Michigan didn't handle them very well. Wisconsin's very good at that. But on the other side of the ball, that's the big concern, is that they start bleeding clock. They get 4 yards per carry on first down, 4 or 3 on second down. You've got second and medium or third and short. That's been the case the last 2 times they've played. You have no idea what to expect. That sets up the big passing play. That sets up all kinds of different things that they can do with the tight end, and Graham Mertz gets more comfortable. So they've got to put it in his hands somehow. And if that means stacking the box, playing a little bit more press man coverage than they want to, because you also can't give those little hitch routes that Rutgers got about 5-6 yards on first down, 7 yards on a lot of plays in the second half. Otherwise, it's as good as a big run, right? On first down, it doesn't matter how you get the yardage. So to me, the early downs are going to be critical here. Stopping the run is going to be critical. I don't have any idea how good this Michigan interior line is going to be against a team like this with a bigger offensive line. You hope that Wisconsin still struggles to run the ball, and if that's the case, then I think Michigan's going to have a legit shot here. But if they can bleed clock, Clay, then you're in for a long afternoon.
Yeah, you get 4 or 5 yards, the pile gets pushed. You can kind of feel it building. At Wisconsin, we've seen it so many times, including a couple of years ago. And it's funny, you remember Josh Ross going out in that game 2 years ago and how much of an impact that seemed to make as well when the linebackers were pretty thin in 2019. And obviously then he missed most of the rest of that season, redshirted and all that. So that was big then. I think it was one of the worst things that could have happened to this Michigan team to have him banged up, not only because it helped allow Rutgers get back in that game, but before a game when you need him the most. And Sean Nua had an interesting comment on Wednesday where he was like, it's almost a good thing that he went out in the respect that we realized, is this guy the only guy talking? We need to communicate better, and we need guys to step up and say, hey, you got to be here. I know what I'm doing. Are you going to be in this gap or whatever? So communication has to be better. They've said that every week. I hope they get that cleaned up before this game. But you mentioned it was stopping the run is going to be, very, very hard to do against a Wisconsin team. But if you can slow it down enough and get them in some of those situations where they have to put the ball in Graham Mertz's hands, I think that's Michigan's easily their best shot to win this game. I think the corners have gotten better where, maybe they could man up and play some defense on some pretty good, okay wide receivers. There's no Quintez Cephas or anything for Wisconsin. Go ahead.
As long as they find the ball, Jamon.
Yes.
Right?
That's what I was going to say next is creating takeaways. Wisconsin is a team that historically has not made mistakes, but the last season or two, really last season, when you look at the numbers as well, they've made quite a few mistakes. They went 4-3 last year. I think Paul Chris was asked at his press conference, like he has a losing record over their last, I think, 18 games. So this is a Wisconsin program right now in a pretty big sample size that is struggling with turnovers, is struggling with offense really in general and in all aspects. Graham Mertz, 4 turnovers against Notre Dame, 2 against Penn State. Can Michigan come up with something that they've only got one of, interceptions? Or maybe you get a lucky bounce on a fumble or something like that too. It's going to come down to that. And this is the other thing that's a key for me, is there's hardly any margin for error in this game. You can't make mistakes. You can't drop a pick. It's just about the same thing as Cade McNamara throwing an interception. So you got to be clean when the opportunities are there. It's going to be maybe a little boring, more of a boring game, some more punts, things like that, better defense. But that means that when the opportunities come for you, you've got to make the plays. And Michigan hasn't done that enough, in my opinion, so far this season. They've been stout, they've been okay, they've been good, but they haven't come up with the game-changing plays.
Yeah, and I wrote that in Keys to the Game, play a clean game. That means no false start penalties. Can't have 1st and 15, 2nd and 12, 2nd and 13 against this team, or you're going to be punting, right? You can't have the turnovers in your own end. And that's, again, why your pass protection better be really good, or you're going to get those tip balls. Your quarterback's going to get happy feet. You're going to get that pick in your own territory. So you got to have great special teams. Those kickoffs need to go through the end zone like they have been all year. Jake Moody. Brad Robbins needs to have a great game. He's probably going to have some opportunities based on what we've seen from that Wisconsin defense. So playing a clean game was one of the huge keys. There's no question about it. So, but there's such a great opportunity here, Clay. And that's what one thing we need to stress is that they knew in that building that they had to go 4-0. They knew it to get the momentum and have a chance to have a good season. Now is your real opportunity here. You win this game, and then you've got that. You're feeling really good about yourself going into Nebraska, which, by the way, does that look like an easy game anymore?
No.
I need to tell people this even after the first week, oh God, Balas, you're an idiot because, Nebraska lost to Illinois. It doesn't work that way. Their defensive line's looking better. They played a much better game at Michigan State. So you've got a 2-game stretch here where, think about this. If you beat Michigan State, if you beat Wisconsin and then you go into Nebraska with that opportunity before a bye week, man, you're rolling. Then you've got a chance to really do something pretty special. So we'll see what happens, Clay. I'm not expecting it, and we'll do staff picks here soon. But I do think there's an opportunity. And the one thing that I can say and that I've stressed all week is that I don't think this team is going to lay down like some of the other teams have to Wisconsin. Last year's was an embarrassment. Those guys were waving the white flag in the second quarter. Not acceptable at a place like Michigan. So I think you're going to see these guys play their asses off for an entire game here, win or lose. And, I expect a relatively close game.
That's what I'm expecting as well. We are recording this before staff picks due to Chris traveling and heading over to Madison. Do you have a pick yet? Because I do have a score picked out. What's your score, I guess?
I do. And it is, I guess we're going to put this up after staff picks.
Exactly.
So I've got Wisconsin 24, Michigan 16, maybe 23-16, that type of a game. So I just in this environment, they haven't proven they can win in an environment like this. This is the first big road game for Cade McNamara with a crowd, right? So to me, for a lot of these guys, it's their first time playing in that environment. I just think it's going to be too much for them to overcome.
I think Michigan's going to have a heck of a chance to pull off this upset, but matchup-wise, for me, I trust Wisconsin a little more. And I know Wisconsin people have said, don't trust Wisconsin. But maybe I'm scarred or whatever. I have 14-13. You're expecting a barn burner. I got Wisconsin winning 14-13. I think it's a toss-up. I guess that would make Michigan, covering the 1.5 spread. But I think it could go either way. But right now I trust the matchup in Wisconsin's favor. And, but I did want to leave everybody with this one quote from Sean Newell, which I thought was funny and also awesome at the same time. There's something about going into somebody else's house and tearing it apart. It's more fun that way. Can Michigan do that on Saturday? Like you said, all you can ask for is a shot. They're an undefeated number 14th ranked Michigan team heading into one of the tougher environments in the country. Go do it, man. I mean, go win that game. So any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
I couldn't say better. And it's funny because Nua's done it as a player. And if you look at some of the former Michigan players that we've talked to, they said there's nothing like going on the road and taking over somebody's house. It's way past time, Clay, that they did that and got that swagger back. But it's hard to do it when you don't have that championship DNA, something they haven't had for 16 years. When it's passed down from class to class to class, and that's the expectation, I can't tell you how much more that means, how significant that is. So we'll see, but they've got to get a break here and there. Let's hope that they get a couple. My initial score was 24-13, something like that. So I'm being a little optimistic, frankly, with the 23-16 pick. Damn, I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see what happens. Looking forward to it either way.
By the time he gets to Madison, he'll be inching closer and closer to a Michigan win. So we'll see. Maybe not, but we will see. Stay tuned at thewolverine.com. I think they have a heck of a chance, even though I'm picking them to lose. I think it's a toss-up type of game. Pre-game, in-game, post-game, thewolverine.com, your one-stop shop for Michigan football coverage here this weekend for Wisconsin. I'm excited, man, and everybody enjoy the game.